Now, back to our top story in Georgia, where a man was arrested in the cold case murder of a University of Georgia law student. And this guy was fighting for bond. 48-year-old Edrick Faust, arrested earlier this year in the 2001 murder of law student Tara Baker. And firefighters discovered her body when they went to an apartment fire there, and they say that she was sodomized, she was strangled, and she was stabbed. Now, we're going to get you caught up on that hearing where the prosecutor argues against letting the man accused of her murder out on bond. Let's take a look.
First of all, Your Honor, the state is accusing the defendant, Mr. Faust, of entering the home of Tara Louise Baker, a young woman who was a first-year law student at UGA in her off-campus apartment that was located at 160 Dawn Drive in Athens, Georgia, on January 19th of 2001. The state is accusing Mr. Faust of violently attacking Ms. Baker, of sodomizing her, of strangulating her, of stabbing her in the neck, and of blunt force trauma to the head, causing her death, and then setting fire to her apartment to conceal the body as well as to conceal any extra evidence that there might have been of his wrongdoing. Your Honor, I will refer to the Ayala case that the defense did off, because that is what we are here to discuss, the 4 factors of the Ayala case and whether Mr. Faust is eligible for bond under those factors. Factor number 1 is the severity of the crime. Again, the defense has laid out what those crimes are. 4 felony murder charges, 1 malice murder charge. We have aggravated assault. We have arson. We have rape. We have aggravated sodomy. These are all serious charges, Your Honor, and are at the very top level of severity of crimes that the state of Georgia has recognized. This is a heinous crime. It includes the strangulation, stabbing, and the blunt force trauma to the victim's head. The second Ayala factor is a flight risk. Your Honor, throughout his history, we have him in different locations, in different places, and even his fiancé was not sure about how long they had been living together, whether it was 2 years or 1 year. Number 3, the threat to the public. Your Honor, this defendant has a 49-cycle criminal history. He has violent offenses, and he has over 20 probation violations, which means that he has shown a pattern of disregard to the most basic conditions of being out of probation, and that is do not commit another crime. He has offenses such as aggravated assault in 2001, 15 days after Ms. Baker's assault. And in there, he was charged and convicted with slicing a victim's neck. He has a battery in 2011, terroristic threats in 2018, violation of a family protective order, and you saw the simple battery in 2020. For these reasons, Your Honor, we do find him a threat to the public. Which brings us to the last Ayala factor, the likelihood to reoffend and commit these future crimes. And there you see, 49 cycles in his criminal history. He was out on bond, Your Honor, when the murder of Tara Baker occurred. And so it is with the interest of justice and safety, Your Honor, for the community that the state does ask that, Your Honor, find the defendant a danger to the community and that you deny his bond. Thank you.
Well, the prosecutor makes some good points there. Let's talk about it. Should this guy get a bond? He sounds pretty dangerous to me. Let me bring in criminal defense and civil rights attorney Casey early on this one. Casey, I heard the prosecutor going through that rap sheet. This guy, a career criminal. Your thoughts on whether it is fair and just for him to stay in on bond awaiting this trial?
Not going anywhere. Here in Florida, we call it an author hearing, and it's proof evident presumption grade. And the judge has to take into consideration the facts and the circumstantial evidence, as well as balance an act to determine whether or not there is sufficient grounds for the safety of the community. And she has to take into consideration his criminal past. This is a career criminal. You heard the prosecutor say that he had over 20 violations of probation. That means that he can't even stay out after his case has been concluded and abide by the terms and conditions of his release. Also, you have to understand that the judge acknowledges everything, and look at his body language. Very intimidating. Just watching it through the screen, the way he's looking at her, the way he's staring. Even I noticed the defense attorney had to tell him, come back and don't do that. So no, he's staying in, and based on the evidence and facts and circumstances of the case, I'm pretty sure that the prosecution is preparing for their trial.
Definitely, Casey. Yeah, he has no hope here. And think about this judge, right? Could we talk a little bit about when you're in the position of the judge? Obviously, the attorneys, they're advocates, as you know. His attorney. I always say, don't get mad at the criminal defense attorneys. His attorney's just doing his job, trying to argue, as best he can for him under the circumstances. The state has its own considerations. The judge has a lot to think about too, because as the prosecutor noted, Faust was out on bond. He had a pending case, and another judge had given him a bond when he allegedly violated the conditions of that bond, picking up this case. And so what do you think the judge may be thinking about in terms of considering whether to release this guy?
Well, she's definitely taken into consideration the violent crimes. It's just not that you have a past criminal history, but you got to dig a little deeper. What is the criminal history? Is the criminal history nonviolent? Are they drug offenses? Or are they battery offenses that eventually led up to this charge of murder? So she's going to take that into consideration. Also, just as you pointed out, you were out on bond so that you committed or caught another charge. You can't be trusted. You have this propensity to violate the rules, terms, and conditions of pretrial release, because that's essentially what it is. His only other option would be house arrest, but you've proven time and time again that that would not be the proper release and conditions for you. So he's staying in, no bond hold.
You're right, Casey. Thank you for all of that. Stand by kindly, please. We're going to hit our first break of the hour. When we come back, guess what? Faust's fiancé takes the stand in this bond hearing to try to convince the court to give her fiancé a bond as he awaits his homicide trial. We'll be right back.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan.
In every story, in every trial, every case, there's at least two sides to it.
To dive into the latest.
Oh my God.
And breaking true crime stories.
This was a very targeted, very personal attack.
Inside.
I've never seen that in Discovery. I've been incarcerated 3 years.
And outside of the courtroom.
She's a psychopath.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight, 9/8 Central. Only on Court TV.
Since the arrest, I've done my due diligence, and I've learned how this defendant has lived these past 23 years without any regard for the law that Tara was hoping to one day represent.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julie Grant. We turn back now to the hearing in the cold case murder of Georgia law student Tara Baker. So she was a first-year student who was brutally killed the day before her 24th birthday. Her murder happened in 2001. And it wasn't until May of this year when somebody was arrested, a guy named Edrick Faust. Investigators say that some new technology helped lead them to his arrest. He's facing numerous charges, including felony murder, arson, aggravated sodomy, and tampering with evidence. And on Tuesday, his defense attorney called his fiancée to the stand to try to help convince the judge to give him a bond.
Sir, if you would please raise your right hand to this on the court. Do you swear and affirm that the testimony that you're about to give for this on the court is the truth, the whole truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. Can you please state your name for the on the court reporter?
Linda Thornton. Could you spell that for us, please? Last name? Both names. Okay. Thank you.
LINDATHORNTON. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Thornton, have you ever been arrested?
No.
Have you ever been convicted of a crime?
No.
Can you tell this on the court? Are you currently employed?
Yes.
And where are you employed? You don't have to say your job location, but what city is your employment?
State of Georgia.
How long have you been employed with your employer?
3.5 years.
And what's your job title?
I'm assistant plant manager.
And do you know Mr. Edrick Faust?
Yes.
How do you know Mr. Faust?
Well,
2014, but I just knew him socially, but in the last 3.5 years, I've been knowing him personally.
What is your relationship with Mr. Faust?
I'm his fiancé.
Can you tell them where Mr. Faust was born and raised?
Okay, he was born in Elberton, but he was raised in Oak Park.
And where does Mr. Faust reside when he is not in custody?
In Washington, Georgia.
And how far is Washington, Georgia from that?
About 35 miles.
Can you tell us about Mr. Faust's profession?
He's had a pressure company that he washed cars, pressure wash, and he's been had the company like 7 years.
When you say he had the company,
he still has the company. I said have the company.
As the owner?
Yes.
Does Mr. Faust have any involvement in the community that you could tell a report about?
Yes, he always tried to help the elder people. When he's washing like maybe 3-4 times a month, some of the elder people in the neighborhood that he grew up in, he'll wash their cars free. And also, if they need something moved or he'll help them with lawn work or anything like that. Also, he does try to help the youth out if they're not working in his old neighborhood. He may hire them a couple days a week.
And then is it fair to say you're a bit nervous right now?
Yes.
If you do this for me.
Okay, my voice is hoarse because I have sinus.
It's okay. Slow down a little bit for me. Court reporter is getting everything you're saying.
Okay.
When I ask you a question, you just pause for a second.
Okay.
Just let the butterflies start out. Can you tell the member of the court what Mr. Faust does on a day-to-day basis? Well, excuse me. Before Mr. Faust was in custody, how often would you see him?
Oh, every day we stay together.
Can you tell the court about Mr. Faust's day-to-day activities, things he would do every day, or common things he would do every day before he was in custody?
Common things he would do every day. Get up, probably have breakfast, go to work, throughout the week, and come home, be in the yard, doing yard work. If some of the neighbors needed some help, he'll go up and help them. He always tried to spend at least like 2 days a week, have lunch with his daughter. Okay, maybe we'll go out maybe 1 or 2, 3 days out of the week for lunch or dinner.
Would it be fair to describe Mr. Faust as a go to work, go home type of person?
Yes.
What family does Mr. Faust have?
Oh, we have several cousins. The majority of probably is in Athens. We still have a few in Oakdale. Our first cousins, they really close. They try to keep in contact and communicate.
What about his parents? Where is his parents?
Both his parents passed away.
To your knowledge, has Mr. Faust ever been convicted of a crime?
Yes.
Have you ever been arrested?
Yes.
You're aware, or are you aware that Mr. Faust served prison time?
Yes.
How long ago was that?
About 20 years ago.
Based on this knowledge that you have of Mr. Faust, intimate knowledge that you have of Mr. Faust, if this honorable court was to grant Mr. Faust a bond, do you believe Mr. Faust would flee and fail to return to court?
No, because he's been in the court system before and he didn't flee.
Do you believe Mr. Faust poses a significant threat to commit a felony while out on bond?
No. For the last 3.5 years, I know him personally. He always tries to steer clear of any kind of conflicts.
Ms. Gonzalez, any questions for Ms. Williams?
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms.
Good morning.
My name is Edrick Lamont Faust. I represent the state. In this case, I just have a few follow-up questions. You said that you are Mr. Faust's fiancé. How long have you been together?
Well, we've been staying together for 2 years, but we was dating for 3 years.
For 3 years. Okay. Would that take it back to 2021, 2020?
Mm-hmm.
You have to say yes or no.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Yes.
Okay. And do you guys live together? You said something about staying together, but do you live together?
Yes.
Okay. And how long have you been living together?
About 2 years.
About 2 years, okay. Did you know that Mr. Faust was arrested in November of 2022 for simple battery?
No.
Okay, but that would have been the time that you guys were together, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you're saying that you did not know that he had been arrested?
I would object.
On what grounds?
I don't have a simple battery conviction from Mr. Faust, so I would say putting matters into evidence unless you can show me where he has a 2022 conviction for simple battery.
I'm going to overrule the objection. She's got this witness on cross. You may follow up with this witness when she's finished.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you know he was arrested in 2022?
Not for simple battery, no.
Were you with him as dating with him in 2022?
Yes.
So it means that you did not know everything that was happening with your fiance?
Well, we wasn't probably staying the whole time in 2022 together.
Okay, so when...
I wasn't his fiancé, you know.
I get it. So when were you his fiancé then?
Well, we, probably last year.
Probably last year.
Yes, ma'am.
So not in
Sometime last year.
2022.
Yeah, we was dating.
Last year.
Yes.
Okay. And, you know, you spoke to the defense about how you have this property and it's worth $85,000.
Yes.
Is that most of your wealth?
Yes.
In that property?
Yes.
And you're willing to sign it over for your fiance?
Yes.
Are you willing to do anything for your fiance?
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect, Mr.
Yes, no, I have a question. If I know was to send Mr. Faust to 24 hours house arrest with GPS monitoring, would you be okay with that?
Yes.
Are there any guns in your home?
No.
Does Mr. Faust have a passport to your knowledge?
No.
Okay. And are you confident that Mr. Faust will abide by all gun conditions?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to really take your time and think about this question. The state asked you, would you do anything for Mr. Faust? Your response was yes. Can you explain that answer a little bit for us?
Well, I was saying I would do anything to support him as far as the bond and putting my property and stuff up.
Okay. So it's limited to that. You aren't saying, hey, I would do anything in the world. You're just saying for the limited purpose of him.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you so much. I have no other questions.
Anything else, Ms. Gonzalez?
One last question. Ms. Thornton, do you love him?
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Bruce, anything else, may this witness step in?
Yes, ma'am.
You may step in.
Okay, what did you think of that? So let me bring back in our legal analyst guest, see what she thinks of it. Criminal defense and civil rights attorney Casey Early, watching along in Florida where she practices. Oh, Casey, what do you think about the fiancé being called here in the bond hearing?
You know, her testimony is biased anyway, and I'm pretty sure the judge knows that. But this is why you have to listen to the question that's being asked and don't just respond, yes, explain yourself. And I think the defense attorney caught that because the prosecutor was so intelligent when she stopped at that response when she asked, would you do anything to help the defendant? And she said yes. And that's when the defense attorney got back up and said, well, can you explain that? The fact that you have to explain it shows that, you know, that was the wrong response. And I'm pretty sure that the judge is listening to the testimony, but it's not going to weigh heavily because she knows that this is her fiance. She loves him dearly. But, you know, the facts and circumstances of this case are bad.
Definitely, Casey. Did you like how the prosecutor started with how long have you been together? You know, she did ask an open-ended question there, which, you know, typically are no-nos, but this is a bond hearing. She's looking for some information and got out that this woman didn't know him back in 2001 at the time of the incident. Did you like that as a starting point?
Of course, because people change their character. I mean, based on the evidence and the facts that comes out that he's a cold-blooded killer, she didn't know him then. She just knows this person, this facade that he's putting on. Obviously, if he is guilty of this case, he's not going to admit to it. So he's showing one side of who he is. The judge has to make this call as to whether or not it's a safe move to release him, whether it's on house arrest. I do believe that she responded that they've been living together for the past 2 years, but I don't think that's enough. Based on his criminal history, I think it heavily outweighs his contribution to society, being this career criminal that just doesn't know how to follow the rules of probation.
Right, Casey. Speaking of the criminal history, I wonder if the fiancé might now start thinking differently of him hearing all of his history, because we know people aren't always truthful about their criminal records, and this guy's got a long one. And I wonder if she was in the courtroom. I kept thinking, if I heard fiancé, I thought, oh, I wonder if she heard the prosecutor going through everything he's done in his past. I wonder if that's gonna maybe force a breakup, or if she's gonna stand by him. I don't know. I don't know. Who knows? Like I always say, for every pot, there's a lid, right? There might be something there that she really is just drawn to him, because if a murder allegation isn't scaring her off, I don't know what will. Your thoughts, Casey?
Julie, I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, engagement off, but love is blind. Seriously, we don't know what's connecting her to him. It could be over time, once the facts and evidence is revealed during the trial, and once she goes and plays back maybe the interactions that they have, or maybe the guilty verdict will draw her away from him. But as of right now, it's still fresh. She's still in love. Obviously, she would do, quote, anything for her man. So, we shall see.
You're exactly right. Love is blind, and and that is her truth. And in her mind, she obviously believes in him. She loves him. She wants to support him. I mean, heck, she came to court to testify for him at his bond hearing, which we know in the grand scheme of things, this isn't the most important hearing, but obviously it says something that she made a point to be there. We'll leave it there for now. We're going to continue with watching this testimony. Casey, more questions for you coming your way. We've got Tara Baker's sister now gonna take the stand next, and she's gonna stress the damage that was done to her family after her sister was so brutally killed in her first year of law school. We'll watch it together on the other side of the break.
Tonight on Court TV.
These are the big cases that everyone is talking about.
A lot of new developments taking place.
Shocking.
I know who killed John Bonet.
To say the least.
You cannot make this stuff up.
It's unreal.
The scene of the double murders is behind us right here.
Things are happening. The investigation is continuing.
Closing arguments with Vinnie Politan. Tonight at 8/7 Central. Only on Court TV.
Back to court we go now. We're watching the bond hearing for the man accused in a cold case murder of a University of Georgia law student. So this guy wants bond, even though he's got a really lengthy criminal history. He's entitled to make these arguments with his attorney before the court, and we know he's facing a murder charge too, so the judge is going to weigh that as well. We just heard from his fiancé. Just heard her testify. Of course, she's going to stand by him, and now we're about to hear from the sister of victim Tara Baker. So Tara was 23 years old when she was found dead in her home back in 2001. She was beaten, she was sexually assaulted, she was stabbed, and she was strangled. And then the building was set on fire. This has devastated her family, as you can imagine, and her sister came to testify to try to help the state ensure that the man accused of killing Tara won't be given a bond. Let's watch.
And who are you in relation to Tara Baker?
I'm her sister.
Thank you. And you had a statement that you wanted the court to hear.
Yes, ma'am, that's all right.
Please proceed.
Well, as we already stated, I'm Meredith Baker Schroeder, and I'm Tara's sister. I'd like to thank Your Honor for the opportunity to speak on behalf of my family. January 19th, 2001 was, by no stretch of the imagination, the darkest day of our lives. As we made the 90-mile journey to Athens that night, we had no idea what lay in wait for us. Believing that Tara's death was an accident, it wasn't until we were sat down by police that we were told that foul play was involved. That night, our lives were shattered, our childhoods abruptly ended, and although we have learned to breathe, walk, and live with gaping wounds in our skulls, we are not the same people that woke that January morning. We have strived to keep going and to live the life that was denied Tara. While she was only 23, she had already set the bar so high that it is yet to be reached. Now today we face the defendant who is allegedly responsible for the heinous crimes committed against our Tara, for cutting her precious, promising life short. We've waited 23 years for an arrest and an indictment, And within those 12 counts, we learned just how horrific and harrowing Tara's last moments were. Since the arrest, I've done my due diligence, and I've learned how this defendant has lived these past 23 years without any regard for the law that Tara was hoping to one day represent. This defendant has been no stranger.
Objection, Your Honor.
What's your objection?
The Crime Victim Bill Act allows her to discuss how this has impacted her. She cannot make comments about Mr. Faust.
I'm going to overrule your objection. You may continue.
This defendant has been no stranger to this very courthouse or the surrounding counties for that matter. For 30 years, he has wreaked havoc on this community. He put a knife in a man's neck just a few months following Tara's death. He gave a false name to police. He was arrested for criminal trespass.
Objection, Your Honor. It's the same objection. She cannot attack Mr. Faust under the Crime Victims Bill Act. She can discuss how it affects her. She cannot attack him on the stand.
Okay. I'm going to overrule your objection and make a comment that anything the witnesses say is not to be considered as evidence at this moment. You may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. He was arrested for criminal trespass, battery, assault, fleeing police, distributing narcotics, harassment, stalking, and a lost count of all his parole violations. This defendant cannot go to Waffle House without throwing a tantrum, nor the 40 Watt without breaking a man's jaw, nor cruise without being arrested for domestic violence. At least we forget that he is far from UGA for indecent exposure. Your Honor, the defendant stood before you in 2019 for violation of a TPO granted by Judge Stevens for aggravated stalking and harassing phone calls of his ex-wife. In that bond hearing, you noted that this court finds that the defendant possesses a significant risk of committing future felonies and is a significant risk of intimidating witnesses. Given the reason that we are here today, we don't see how that previous statement can be any less true.
Any further questions of this witness, Ms. Gonzalez?
No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Cruz?
Just a minute.
Go ahead.
First and foremost, I want to say that I'm tremendously sorry for your loss. I just have a couple of questions for you, if that's okay.
Sure.
The statement that you provided us before regarding the impact that this has had,
Yes, sir.
that would apply to anybody that would be said. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And at this time, you don't know whether or not Mr. Faust is actually the person who does that anything to your sister. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. All right, I'm going to bring in my guest, legal analyst, criminal defense and civil rights attorney, Casey Early, watching along. Casey, first question was about the objections. I want to ask you about that. What did you think when you heard defense counsel objecting to this witness reading her statement?
Yeah, obviously we know it's not evidence, so the judge made the proper ruling. She's just expressing her thoughts, her concerns. But hey, as a defense attorney, you want to be zealous in your advocacy, but I wouldn't have posed any objections at this time. I really thought that her statement actually was compelling. She did her homework. She outlined this timeline and all of his arrests to show the judge that he is not fit for society. He does not know how to follow rules. In fact, he habitually breaks rules. Therefore, he should remain behind bars until the conclusion of this case. She was well thought out and made her statement, and I really believe that the judge took that into consideration.
Yes, you're exactly right. Then how about after she concluded, defense counsel didn't stop with the objections. He then said, I'm going to cross her. I have questions for her. Your thoughts on that move?
Yeah, sometimes as a defense attorney, there's a fine line between zealous advocacy and doing too much. You should know that this is just a hearing. It's not going to, although it will affect the judge's determination as to whether or not she issues the bond, you don't want to pose too many objections where it's clear that the judge has sustained those objections and, overruled your objections and continue. I mean, there's a time and place. So you have to make that judgment call as an advocate. So I don't believe that was necessary, but he's doing his job and zealously advocating for his client.
Right, Casey. Let's see what the judge decides. Let's go back in where she announces her decision.
right. With regard to the issue of bond, both counsel are correct that the court must consider 4 factors in determining whether an accused is to be granted bond. The 4 factors are these: whether a defendant poses a significant risk of fleeing from the jurisdiction of the court or failing to appear in court when required. The state has not presented evidence with regard to that factor. Number 2, whether the defendant poses a significant threat or danger to any person, to the community, or to any property in the community. The state, by proffer, has indicated some of the evidence that they have. And based on that evidence, it is clear to this court that the way in which the state has alleged these crimes happened show this court that this defendant, at this time, poses a significant threat to persons in the community. The 3rd factor is whether the defendant poses a significant risk of committing any felony pending trial. The state has presented evidence with regard to the felony record of Mr. Faust. The felony record that the state has presented includes the years 1997, several convictions from 2000, several convictions from 2001, 2013, 2015, and 2018. The court finds that that evidence is sufficient to show this court that this defendant poses a significant risk of committing any felony pending trial. And the last factor that the court must consider is whether this defendant poses a significant risk of intimidating witnesses or otherwise obstructing the administration of justice. The state has not presented evidence with regard to that factor. But based on the evidence that the state has presented with regard to the proffer with regard to count 2 and the evidence with regard to count 3, I'm going to deny bond.
A smart judge she is. And we thought this would be denied, right? I mean, you would bet the house on it, right? But you never know. You never know. Sometimes we get surprises in criminal courts. I want to bring back in Attorney Casey early. Casey, you know, every now and again something stunning happens. But you thought this was a pretty sure thing that this guy would be in jail awaiting his trial. So now what happens for him? Would you kind of speak to us about the trial prep? When you do criminal defense work, okay, so there's a loss here, but it doesn't mean it's a loss in the case overall for this guy. We know he's got a zealous advocate, as you pointed out. Where does the preparation begin now for Edrick Faust's attorney?
Well, if it had not already started, there's usually a timeline. So you first want to request discovery. Here in Florida, the state has 15 days from the date of the filing to produce the discovery. And if it's not produced timely, I typically file a motion to compel because I am on that clock. But with a case like this, which is complex, which is obviously dealing with DNA advances in technology, I'm pretty sure that the defense attorney may possibly waive speedy, which is he needs additional time to prepare, possibly if this client is indigent, get an attorney, not an attorney, but an expert to rebut any evidence that the prosecution will bring forth regarding the DNA. So this will be a long time to prepare for this case, depending on the facts and circumstances and the evidence received by the attorney.
Casey, thank you for that. You know, as this guy gets ready for trial, something that some viewers were talking about yesterday, you can't help but notice he's got the filled-in teardrop tattoos on his face, and we don't know what the meaning is. We haven't talked to him about this, but we know that sometimes it can signify gang affiliations, sometimes it can signify violence, looking for revenge. Curious if you think maybe his defense counsel will, if he decides to go to trial, recommend a little bit of makeup to cover those.
He can recommend it, but oftentimes you can't cover it up. I just had a murder trial last month where my client decided to have these tattoos while incarcerated, by the way. So it wasn't on his mugshot. So he had these tattoos, and I just had to addressed during my jury selection, and thankfully I did, because there were some jurors that were actually honest and said because they see those face tattoos, they have this bias against him. So as a defense attorney, the best place to kind of pick that fair and impartial jury is during jury selections. I can't stand face tattoos because it signifies that you are possibly a part of a gang to a jury. And the defense attorney definitely has to address that to the potential panel before he picks it.
That was really smart of you to do that. What was your reaction when you went to visit him and then you see them suddenly appear on his face?
I was upset, and I asked him, but the damage was already done, so I had to address the elephant in the room, and I'm glad that I did. So I was able to disqualify that juror.
Yeah, that was really smart of you to do that. And that's just a great example of a client throwing, the person looking out for them the most in their legal world of problems, and they give you a problem to deal with, and now you've got to explain it and hope you don't have somebody who's going to hold it against your client at trial. Casey, earlier, you're the best. Thank you so much for everything. By the way, we missed you when you were in that trial. I remember when you were gone because we didn't get to have you on our power panels on opening statements. So glad you're done. Hopefully some pleas for now. We'll see you soon.